welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. Thank you so much for joining me out in the garden today, harvesting this nice big bowl of cherry tomatoes with me. As you probably noticed, my tomato plants are starting to succumb to disease. It's that time of year when that really happens. But despite that, cherry tomato season's in full swing. We got a nice big bowl of cherry tomatoes today. I have another bowl just the size of cherry tomatoes in my house. This is more than we're going to eat fresh before they go bad. So what we're going to do today is we are going to preserve some of these cherry tomatoes. I'm going to show you how I dehydrate them. That is my favorite way to preserve cherry tomatoes, and there's just so many delicious ways to use them so that you can enjoy this little taste of summer even during the middle of winter. So let's head on into my kitchen, and I am going to pull up my dehydrator. I'm going to grab my other bowl of cherry tomatoes in the house. We have a few more tomatoes on the deck that I'm going to grab, and I am going to show you guys how I dehydrate these. Okay guys, so this is totally unrelated to today's video, but I was out here picking tomatoes to dehydrate and this beautiful nasturtium opened. It's so gorgeous. So I just had to show you guys. It's a real, I'm not sure if that color is really coming through on the camera. It's a really beautiful wine red. I just love that color. So I just had to show you guys so that you could appreciate it too. Okay, so I've got this big bowl of cherry tomatoes that we're going to go ahead and dehydrate. I've got my dehydrator back here. So what I'm going to do with these tomatoes is I'm just going to take the little leaves and stem end off of all of them. And then in my dehydrator, I have these trays here. You can see that the holes in these are fairly large. So for the bigger tomatoes like these, that's going to be fine. Keep in mind, whenever you dehydrate something, it's losing its moisture content. It's going to end up being a lot smaller. So for these little tomatoes here, once these are cut in half and dehydrated, these could potentially fall through these holes. So for the trays that have those tomatoes on them, I am going to use these liners, these mesh liners that have a much smaller hole, and we're going to put the small red tomatoes on those. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to group the tomatoes by type. So this tray here will have all the small red tomatoes. Because of the different sizes and the different moisture contents and the different varieties of tomatoes, they're probably not going to dehydrate at exactly the same rate. So that way, if my little red ones are done sooner, I can pull those out and then keep the bigger ones going for a couple more hours. So let's go ahead and get these tomatoes all prepped and our trays loaded up, and then I'll meet you back here. So all our tomatoes are sliced up and ready to go in the dehydrator. You can see that I arranged them on the dehydrator trays cut side up. You definitely want to do that because that is going to allow the moisture from the tomatoes to fully dehydrate. So I'm just going to stick this tray in our dehydrator. I'm going to run it on 122 degrees. Most recommendations say 125 degrees for cherry tomatoes. My dehydrator does not have a setting for 125, so we're going to do 122. Now I'm going to start these for 4 hours. That is not going to be long enough. The reason I'm doing 4 hours is because my dehydrator makes a lot of noise when it ends, and I don't want it to go off at night while everyone's sleeping. So we're going to start it off with 4 hours, and then we're going to run it again in the morning for a little bit longer. This is probably going to take at least 10 hours, maybe 12 hours, maybe even a little bit more for the bigger ones. But I will go ahead and dehydrate all these. I'll bring you back here when they're done and show you, and I will let you know how long it took. Okay, so we're back. It's actually a couple days later. So I ran this for 3 hours that night that we prepared these tomatoes together. In the morning, they weren't done. I knew they weren't going to be done. So I ran it for another 5 hours. After 5 hours, they still weren't done. So I've run it for a couple more increments of 2 hours each. It's been running for about 14 hours total, split up between probably about 2 days or so. So I think that our tray of the little red tomatoes are done. You can see they've shrunk quite a bit. What you want to do is feel them. You don't want them to be completely brittle. You want them to be a little bit flexible, but they shouldn't feel squishy like they have moisture in them. They should feel kind of like a raisin. So this tray of tomatoes is done. These were the small ones. We're going to check on our other tomatoes. I'm sure that the large ones are not done, but we're going to take a look at them and see how much more time they need. So this is our tray of the larger tomatoes. If you feel them, there's quite a bit of moisture still in these. These are going to need several more hours, so I'm going to put these back in the dehydrator for a few hours. I'll let you know how long they end up taking when we're done. As I said, I can't remember if I said before, it's been running for, I think, 14 hours so far. It's either 12 or 14. I think I've lost track a little bit. And the little ones are done. These are going to need at least several more hours. So let's put these back in. I have one more tray of tomatoes here. So these are the medium-sized ones. These kind of seem mixed. There's a few that might be done, but for the most part, I think these do need a few more hours. So I'm going to run these with the other ones for a couple more hours, and then I'll meet you back here and we'll see how they're doing. And I will say, I think next time I do this, I'm going to put the mesh insert on this one too, because these have shrunk, and you can see some of the smaller ones are kind of trying to fall through this. So I do have this, oh, and look at that. I have a solid tray underneath that catches everything, and you can see it did catch a few. So we're just going to get these in there and get them running. Hey friends, it's the next day yet again, and our tomatoes are finally done. So I'm not even sure actually how long these ended up dehydrating for. Probably about, maybe, if I had to guess, I would say probably 18 hours for the larger ones. It was kind of a lot of starting and stopping in between other things that we were doing. But I tend to err on the side of more dry rather than less dry, because I don't want to take any chance of these getting mold on them. So kind of, let me show you. So kind of what you want is you still want there to be some flexibility, but you don't want it to feel really squishy when you squeeze it. You don't want to feel a lot of moisture in that still, because that moisture is what's going to cause it to spoil. So these are all done now. I'm just going to add them into the jar along with the red tomatoes that we put in here yesterday. We're just going to get these all packed up, and these will be great to get us through the winter. So now I've got this beautiful jar of dehydrated cherry tomatoes. And there's lots of great ways to use these. Probably my favorite way to use them is to add them to breads that I make. I do have a video posted of a super easy and delicious sourdough focaccia bread where I use these tomatoes. But you could mix these into all kinds of bread. They'd be great in pasta, they'd be great in chicken. You could try, I've never put them in soup, but you could try doing that. If you have any special ways that you like to use dehydrated tomatoes, leave a comment and let me know, because I'd love to have new ways to use these. So I hope you're having a great day. I hope that your gardens are producing well for you, and that you're having enough food for the summer, and even enough to store up some extra like I'm doing. So I'll see you next time. Bye. See you later.